Hey, g'day, how you going?
Yeah.
I always start these, sorry, I'm going to cut you off. I always start these really like weirdly Australian and everything like that. And that's not how I am every day. I just like, that's my just weird like spectrum energy coming out of like when I was a tradie and you'd meet someone and like you're trying to overly match their energy before they even start. So yeah, sorry about that. I take it back. Let's start again. Can you try this time? You start the podcast because I'm too over the top.
G'day, cobbers.
Oh, fuck. Shit. No one's going to believe that we like heavy music. They're all going to think we listen to Ginny Barnes.
Nothing wrong with Barnsey.
Nothing.
Who would you recommend if you're into Barnsey?
Oh, Fonzie. Come on.
Oh, jeez.
That was right there, Tim.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
That was right there. We're banking them.
Yeah. We didn't even bring other shirts. We're not even trying.
Nothing's changed. Yeah, look, Tim brought the thunder with the last topic. So I was just cooking up, thinking we chat about the path to glory, small venues, and they're dying out. So
yeah, and I think this is a topic that probably really resonates with the both of us, being that, and I'm not sure if we've discussed this in great detail on here, but we've
maybe
both,
not on this podcast, but on our old podcast we were going to talk about.
But certainly we have come from the school of, we both come from small regional towns where we have taken the ambition and the desire to have live original music play in our towns.
Absolutely.
We've both wanted to see those bands. And rather than only ever travel to capital cities to see them, we thought, nah, we're going to bring those bands to our town and put them on and see those stages and put those bands on those stages.
Absolutely.
And so it's certainly a big passion of mine that small venues are integral to the ecosystem of live music, certainly in Australia, but everywhere else in the world.
Without a doubt. Like very, very early example for me was seeing, who was it? It was...
This is in Gladstone?
Yeah, in Gladstone. It was, I'm sure it was an international band, but it was at Meteors. So we had there was a football club, right? So the institution of a small regional town, when you go to like a heavy gig, like someone's putting on a gig, is you need it to be either all ages or licensed all ages so that you can afford to have sort of everyone come along to it. And so for that, you either need a PCYC or you need some sort of sports club that you can hire out like it's a party.
Like a dry hire, yeah.
Like a dry hire. And so ours was the Meteor Sports Club.
Without any exception, it's always a cobbled together PA system out of a couple of bands.
Absolutely.
Practice gear. It's a floor show. You might even be lucky enough to get a couple of Persian rugs on the floor.
Yep.
And
well, I'm playing a skate shop next weekend with my band Strange Fiction. We're going up to Mackay and we're playing Grind Shrine. And I'm in the chat at the moment with the boys, and it's exactly what's happening. They're all cobbling together the production for the thing of like, who's going to bring the speakers? And I've got a sub, and can you bring old mate's cab and everything? And this is what we do to make shows happen.
Yeah. And there's something just so inspiring about that, just so great and DIY about it that it happens.
Yeah.
And the number of bands that I've seen, that I've put on, that you've put on, that are now huge headlining touring acts.
Crazy.
So the pathway from that to that, for me, is wild.
Yeah,
but doesn't happen at that other end without that.
I mean, Amity Affliction is the number one that comes to mind because they're not probably the biggest band. Like in terms of band that I've seen at the moment, Amity is not the biggest band out of all of the ones that I saw when they were really early on in the piece. But it's a good example of a band that consistently got on the road, did the PCYCs and the small venues and stuff and built themselves up to the point where they were at that, international touring level, but probably didn't rise as quick as others. But the other thing that people forget about is your favorite band that's international touring artist out of Australia or America or whatever probably did 10 years of touring and playing to no one and putting stuff out that no one listened to before they started to get popular. And then there's the road from, hey, we've got enough of a foothold to play bigger venues to like actually being internationally recognized. That could be another 5 to 10 years for some bands. So
yeah, 100%.
Amity Affliction now being basically no original members makes a lot of sense because it's a hard road to get from local band that are, teenagers to being in your 40s and like only just being able to maybe make money out of touring.
Yeah, I mean, Parkway, to bring up two really obvious examples, but Parkway Drive, for them to have almost the original lineup, still incredible. They're coming up on nearly 30 years.
Yeah, to be about that.
So it'd be almost 25 now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like though that is a band like I've never seen the Parkway DVD. Everyone always references the Parkway DVD. But
there's at least 4 at this point.
There was the one where they played like the PCYC up in Mackay or something like that, apparently. Again, I haven't seen it. I'm the guy that didn't really listen to Parkway much. But there are a lot of people I know that reference that particular Parkway DVD.
Yeah, as inspiration.
Part of like who they are. Like it's a core piece of media for them when they were growing up that got them into like heavy music and everything. But a lot of those DVDs, those tour documentaries and stuff are about going and doing the grind.
Yeah.
And so the only way to do the grind is to have a small venue that you can go and play at, because if you are very early on in the piece, you're not going to be playing your 800,000 cap venues and stuff. And so the reason I bring it up is like Meteors, for example, our mate James Penny, he was running that. I saw a couple of big bands, like I saw like Convention and House First Hurricane back in the day there. There's some other big band that went through there as well, but that's what we had. So that's where they played. They'd sell it out.
What was the name of the... He then put shows on in the practice room, like the practice hall of the entertainment center.
Oh, the Playhouse. It was the
Playhouse.
It was the basement of the massive entertainment center that, I say massive.
Theater.
It's like a 500-seat theater, and then we had like the space downstairs they used to like
which was
rehearse.
like the rehearse and tuning thing it was like the tuning room for the grand piano.
Yeah, and so we had a ton of bands go through there, and then after all that finished, like in the same realm, like I started using a tennis club for gigs because I was trying to do what was being done by Destroyer Lines down here. So like they were doing Snitch and Thriller in Brisbane, and that were pretty big events, but they were with smaller bands that would get on and cut their teeth.
It is interesting. Similar. You and I both did the sort of name music nights.
Yeah.
Kind of parallel, if not before.
Yeah.
Well, like I was doing Hoist.
Exactly.
Was my thing in Rockhampton.
And we came up and played that venue as well. And like I saw some really sick bands there, like bigger bands, but also I saw a lot of cool local bands, and I got to see like your band and other mates' bands and stuff. And that got me really jazzed on the idea of being in a band, because if you aren't a musician and you just like music, you're a fan. You could very easily go, oh, these are these bands that are popular that I know right now. I want to go see them. And you could pretty much not go to a sub, 200 cap venue ever in your life. There are some people I've met that could name on one hand the amount of gigs they've been to in their life.
And they're all stadium gigs.
They're all like saw the Eagles, and I went and saw Metallica.
Dire Straits.
And, massive shows.
Yeah.
And so they think that gigs only happen in those places.
Yeah, that's a phenomenon. I whenever I do attend a massive show like that, I often think to myself, if every one of these people at this 40,000 cap venue sold out, went to like 3 shows a year.
Yeah.
Elsewhere,
they could be keeping the entire music industry afloat.
Yeah. And these are, maybe $15 to $20 gigs.
Well, that's another thing. So the reason that I brought this topic up was there was last year, I think, an article in some.
I think it was the music. I think it was the music.com.au.
Yeah, and they did a chat about the fact that these smaller, like, sub 500 cap venues are needed for these bands to cut their teeth, and
they were the ones that were struggling at the time
because of international touring.
The ones that were struggling due to post-COVID effects.
Yeah,
plus alcohol tax, making drinks so expensive.
Yeah,
that people are preloading before going to shows, not spending as much in the venue when they arrive. Mm-hmm. And so that takes away the lifeblood of it. But also the solution to that is your marketing can't be, please come and drink more.
Yeah.
That is not a solution to the problem.
Yeah.
And in the 90s it might have been.
That's also like a big cultural
we've learnt a lot
thing to work out as well. Is it's one thing to say, okay, we're going to shift our focus from making money on alcohol sales, but they've still got to make money somewhere. It's the same as a band touring. You don't make money out of selling your music. You don't make money out of actually playing the show, like if you're playing smaller venues and stuff, because there's not a lot of like ticket split to go around. Yeah. So usually the focus is
break even,
trying to sell merch.
Doing very well.
Yeah, if you can sell a ton of merch and make some profit off of the merch, that's usually where bands are getting like the money that makes a difference. And so if you transfer that to the venue, the money that makes a difference for them isn't hiring the venue out, isn't like, even if they are taking merch cuts, which is a whole other thing.
I was just about to raise that. It's a whole other conversation. Let's not get into it.
But selling alcohol is the thing that pays for the venue in the first place. And if there is no interest,
there's bugger all margin in it.
Yeah, well, if there's less people interested in drinking, less people that can afford to drink out in the town, blah, 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 and they're not making their money, they are going to suffer. Typical music venues not going to put pokies in because that's what keeps everything else open. Anyway, the larger point being that these venues are suffering because there's lots of big acts coming on. So there's, you might only want to go out once every 6 months, or say you want to go out once a month and see a gig. There's 5 international touring acts to choose from almost every week. And so you're going to pool your money and go to one thing rather than go to a show every week for $20. You'll save it all up and go to one thing. And so all of the other stuff doesn't get frequented.
Yeah. And when you break it all down cash-wise, it could be up to 7 or 8 shows you could go to in lieu of that one.
100%.
There's obviously room for everything, but I guess what we're saying is please consider.
The saturation at the moment, people would think, wow, the music industry is humming. All these people are touring. They all must be making so much money.
Yeah.
Look, that's such a great thing for them. It's not. It's starving the people that are trying to run the smaller things and to get the next wave of bands. And in the same as any sort of generational issue like that, I mean, it's a big swing. The one-child policy in China, right? Hear me out. I'm not getting into politics, but hear me out. Hey, we've got too many people. We're going to make sure that people have less children so that we can curb our population and make sure that we've got everything under control. Oh shit, we've got an aging population now and not enough new people to come through and to support those old people, and everyone's going to be working until they're 90 because of that. It's short-sighted. It's hard to wrap your head around and get right. But that's an obvious flow-on effect. The equivalent for the music industry, I think, is these smaller venues are going to shut down. The smaller bands are not going to have places to play. It's going to be harder for them. It's going to disincentivize them.
You don't breed the next generation.
10 years later, you're like, hey, why are we all listening to the same bands from 10 years ago and there's no new cool bands? New music sucks. Where were they supposed to go and get good at what they do?
I also think part of this problem is, and I know radio is not where people are discovering new music these days, but radio, I think, really contributes to this problem is that they haven't progressed beyond the same music that's been played for 20 years. You're not creating new generations of fans.
Yeah.
And if you go through the playlists, you probably find that there's tons of new American music. I'm talking about Australian music and breaking new Australian artists on radio.
Yep.
And by extension, then, I guess it flips back and forth each way. TikTok algorithms and Spotify algorithms inspiring radio stations to pick music up because it obviously has an audience, and vice versa.
Yeah.
They've been doing it for years. I think the commercial radio stations not picking up and promoting things at the point at which they could explode.
Yeah.
Has created that people are still, to this day, just flogging the guts out of 80s and 90s music on commercial radio, and it doesn't breed a new generation.
Yeah.
And so then that then on flows to music industry and live.
There's also
where there's the biggest ticket sellers in the 500 and above category are nostalgia acts.
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's the whole.
They're still leaning on a Grinspoon, on 30-year-old bands.
Yeah.
And look at something like Good Things. And while I enjoyed the hell out of that festival, the big guts of that lineup were nostalgia acts.
With nostalgia acts,
things
and
like
throwbacks,
Killing
and
Heidi
bets.
doing Reflector in Full. The Living End was on there. Jet was on there.
Yeah.
Who was the artist? Violent Femmes.
Yeah.
40, 50-year-old band.
Yeah.
It's.
Yeah.
I mean, even Korn, for Christ's sake, is a 30-plus-year-old band.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And I know headliners have always been, they've had to have that long career to be able to have a library of music to play a headline show, but also that long to be a Rolling Stone, a Snowball, to be big enough to actually play that size.
The fact that they're still around, like they could have been, they're not just a nostalgia act because they're still doing stuff and everything like that. There's forgive my ignorance, but I don't think is just Killing Heidi and Jet and those bands, are they still putting out new music regularly? Anyone's listening to?
I mean, Living End might be. That's the fun. I mean, this is a funny phenomenon as well. Certainly, diehard fans of someone like Living End, which I was for a number of years.
Yeah, me too.
But I had a point where I stepped off.
Yeah.
They're putting out new music, but yeah, I'm not the audience anymore.
Well, the other thing that I was thinking before as well was there's a misconception with people that, a new band pops up, this new band got really big overnight. Usually overnight is they were at it for 10 years, or the band might be new, but the members might have been grinding away on other shit. So there's bands that have been grinding away and sort of didn't get anywhere, and then they stopped doing stuff, and people go like, I really like them. I don't know why they stopped. It's because they've stopped, they've pivoted, they've picked up something with everything they've learnt from the road, contacts they've made and everything. They might start a band and 2 years in, they're getting really big, but it's because they've done all of the back-end work grinding through those venues.
Here's an example for you, and I don't know if this is really
meeting people.
Yeah, here's the thing. I don't know if they've really talked about it much in media, but Red Hook, the band Red Hook from Sydney, lead singer Emmy Mack. I don't even remember what year it was, but it could be as early as 2014, 2015. I was down in Sydney and I was doing meetings, and I was well aware of, I can't remember what Emmy's band before Red Hook was called. It was called something else, but had been grinding away at it for years.
Yeah.
And they had, and I think a member or two of Red Hook was in that band as well. And they were like a glam sort of hair metal, sort of alternate rock kind of thing.
Yep.
And but the whole vibe of the whole thing was old. And the reason why it felt old, not because of the age of the members, because they certainly weren't old by that point.
Definitely.
Emmy might have only been freshly 20 at that point. So had been cracking away at it for 5 years. Like when she was a teenager, like doing these shows, and they had this manager from Sydney who was 50s, 60s. Like he was old.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, here's how the Angels did it. It was all about like, here's how the Oils did it and the Angels did it and the Gurus and the Mondo Rock and, all of those sorts of, there was a real like pub touring circuit at that time. And that we'll get back to that because that brings the whole conversation sort of full circle. Was that it was about playing every venue you could and as often as you could back in the day.
I remember talking to our friend Truck's dad, and he was telling us about when he used to live in Sydney, and Cold Chisel
would play numerous gigs per night.
But like they were the band in the corner pub. It was just like, oh, what are we doing this weekend? Oh, I'm pretty sure Cold Chisel will be playing. Like they were like a regular installment at the local pub in, down near whatever one of the beaches was down there, and Icehouse and a couple of those bands. But so I can see why there would be that guy that's like, this is how they did it.
Yes.
Because it worked for them. Times change though, and now we're in the spot we're in where like, people don't do that. People don't just go down because there's some music on.
Yeah.
There's so many other places to get entertainment and everything. And so the idea that you're like, oh, it's Friday, I might go out and see a gig. I know that if I go down to this venue, there's always something on. Doesn't work like that.
Yeah. So the case in point is, not only did Emmy and the members of that previous band, I'm going to ask Emmy what the name of the band was again because I can't remember it. But we sat, I actually put a call out on my socials back then, and I was like, I'm in Sydney with a few hours. I'm at this point. Who wants to come have a coffee?
Yeah.
And Emmy, it must have been like 2 PM. I don't know if she was not working or whether she literally went like, I'll gather the band up. The whole band came down and we had a coffee.
Okay.
She gathered them up and we sat down, and it was at the moment at which they were like, we're firing this manager. We're changing the name of the band. Total change of vibe. We're getting out of this old school style.
Yeah.
And we're calling it Red Hook.
Yeah.
And I was like, amazing. I'm stoked to hear it. Let me know when you got new music.
Yeah.
And since they even started that band, it's been 8+ years to where they are now.
Which is exactly like Spirit Box.
Let's get some perspective on this.
Yeah.
It takes that long to
Yeah.
even get, and I love where Red Hook are. They're getting a real roll on, but they're not a huge band either. Like they're not.
Yeah. Like they still.
So let's put that in perspective.
They're still like, it'll be a year or two from now, they'll get some gig that's like bigger than anything they've had before, and then all of a sudden everyone will be like, oh, where'd this band come from? They must be an overnight success. And you're like, no, man. If only everyone has understood the work and the time that goes into this stuff, especially like when a lot of the time these bands, they're not necessarily business minded, they're driven, but like it is
That's
work.
not a comment on Red Hook, but
no.
Just generally.
Generally, bands just want to play music, right? And there might be someone in the band that is business minded in the sense that they're like, I know the moves I've got to make, blah, blah, blah. But generally, I know personally, I've been in bands before where I'm the only one that is like driving things and everyone else is just happy to play. But there's always someone that gets lumped with all of the admin and all of the trying to get shows and organize the music recording, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, 9 out of 10 bands, no one in the band wants to do anything but play the music, and they're just kind of hoping that someone will come along and help them out to get them where they want to go. So the fact that any bands make it through 10 years of grinding and not getting anywhere is remarkable, because it shows that even though you would rather not do that, you're willing to put in the work to have the hobby?
I saw what you just said resonated with me so hard because I saw a quote the other day that I went, ain't that the truth? Was, quote unquote, so many bands are secretly solo projects.
Yeah. Yeah, that is bang on. Yeah. Absolutely bang on. Yeah. So to bring the whole thing around again, so what are some bands you're seeing at the moment then that are in this like say 200 to 500 cap sort of size where they're the kind of band that would put on a rad show on the same night that like an international band might be coming, and so everyone ums and ahs and goes, oh, I'm going to go and see the US band because they're in town, and so, that other band that I love and that deserve my patronage aren't going to get it. The kind of band that is just before the point of being like, we have to stop everything and go to this show,
I think a really great example of this, and they're literally putting on a 10 years show, is Stepson.
Exactly. Stepson is number one in my mind at the moment as well, of like a band that is fucking worked for it.
And the other one, and they're literally on the same show, and I love that they're both on the same show as She Cries Wolf.
Yeah.
And they're saying goodbye. They're wrapping things up with this.
Yeah.
So
well, She Cries Wolf, one of the members of them, Dan Bellick, who I don't know if he's on bass or guitar now, he's come and gone a little bit, but the very first show that I ever ran personally was for his old band Only Sleeping. And that was in 2011 or whatever. Yeah. So what's that now? Like that's 14, nearly 15 years that he's been in bands doing stuff. And
actually, while we're on this point, like why don't we go back and forth about some shows that we did back in the day or worked or promoted
so
that they were members of that, or literally the band back in the day, to now they're doing massive things or.
So it wasn't one that I ran personally, but up in Rockhampton at the Sally Yards Football Club, which was a BYO.
Yeah, DIY as hell,
very
all
DIY.
ages.
We would bring cartons of booze and put them in the boot of the car, and we would just come in and drink like out of our eskies and stuff. And we saw there was a bill there that was Aversion's Crown, Signal of Firing Squad, and Thy Art is Murder. They all rocked up in their hired high aces and loaded everything into this shitty little football club and started in like the afternoon and played through till night. But it was a 7-band bill, I think, so it was like 4 local bands.
Yeah,
and it was a floor show, and it just felt like every other show. The bands were good. Like I think
that have this is some real specific
a chainsaw, and so it was that was right when they were at the top. Like they'd put out that song that hit way bigger than all their other shit, but they still weren't playing to that size audience yet. So it was like 100 kids jumping over each other for this song. Little did they know, like a year later, that band would be playing 1,000-cap venues.
Here's some real specific Rockhampton lore on that. Did that bill have sprinkler stop valve inside on it?
I don't think so.
Oh, that was Big Willie Styles band.
Oh, yeah. No, I think it was like Lockjaw and Downpour and some other ones.
Oh, so Lachlan Watt?
North Lane.
No, Lachlan Watt was in Downpour.
He was in
wasn't he?
Not that I remember. No, he was in Marathon, I think, for a little bit. Or no, his mate was in Marathon. He was in.
I could swear Lachlan was in Downpour.
Maybe before I started watching them play, but the same venue.
But Lachlan used to come through Rocky playing in bands all the time with. Yeah, like there was a guy called Luke Smith from Rocky who was like a notorious troll on my forum board.
I remember Luke,
and he moved to Brisbane and whatever and started playing in like these sort of like really raucous hardcore bands.
Yeah, well, I mean the other ones were North Lane and I think Diamond Construct, Sienna Skies. That was one, and so North Lane again. They played that same venue as a floor show. But then
I totally remembered I promoted a North Lane show years ago as well. Well, then back when Adrian was the singer.
3 or 4 years later, they'd just got back from Europe, and Adrian was still the singer. And I got them booked through you, actually. You hooked me up with someone at Big Sound that called me like a month later and was just like, hey, do you reckon your tennis club where you do floor shows with the Milk Crate stage,
that would have
I
been,
could send you North Lane? And I was like, I mean, you can if you want, but didn't they just get back from Europe and are they going to want to do this? He's like, it'll be right. It'll be fine.
Was that Edwin?
Edwin, yeah, from New World Artists.
Shout out Edwin Tarani.
They rocked up and they
lord.
looked around and they went, what the fuck have they put us in? Because they just got back from Europe.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I remember you guys playing the Sal Yards not too long ago. And then it was a couple of years after that they played again
in Rocky.
In
nightclub?
At the Grand Hotel through Truck. And then in Rocky as well.
They played in Rocky at that nightclub where they had Uda do the promotion and it was a bit of a disaster. But
well, and so there was a bunch of bands like that. Like there's all, Amity, North Lane.
No, that was Amity, not North Lane. My bad.
Amity, North Lane, Thy Art, Aversion's Crown. I had Thy Art and Aversion's Crown play my tennis club as well in an afternoon where they were playing a Sunday afternoon and it was middle of summer, so it was really bright outside. So I literally put cardboard over all the windows in this tennis club to make it look dark inside justify it. So there's tons of those. What about yours? Have you got?
I got a few. The first one that really made me sort of lose my mind was Dead Letter Circus in 2006.
Yeah.
So they had only just put out The Mile as a single off that EP, the very first EP with the sort of road on the cover.
Yeah.
And they were on the Butterfly Effect Chevelle Dead Letter Circus tour.
Yeah.
And they were doing, so Butterfly Effect was the headline on that, and they were doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Mackay, Townsville, Cairns. And I hit up Dead Letter Circus booking agent at the time, a guy called Matt Crute, and said, do Dead Letter want to just leave a day early and play in Rocky? I'll put them up. And it was a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
And 100 people through the door.
Yeah.
And, that was they only wanted $1,000 guarantee at the time.
Yep.
And we just covered it. And, that's friendship with those guys I've had since 2006 right through to today. I was texting with Kim just the other day.
Yeah, yep.
And that's mind-blowing to know that, over the years, the number of shows that myself and Truck have promoted with them on the bill.
Yeah.
It's amazing to know we've probably put like 100 grand through the pocket of that band.
That's another thing
cool.
that is great about having the small venues as well. Like from the point of view of being a promoter or like a venue owner is being able to have the flip side of it. Like the bands need somewhere to cut their teeth and everything like that. But then you also have the appreciation of having helped them out with that. If you're the venue owner or the promoter, you get to see that happen, and the bands that you want to come to the forefront do because you're giving them somewhere to come from. It's crushing though to see places like the Zoo is a bit of a bigger venue, but the Zoo to have to close down.
It sits in that 500 cap range for sure.
Yeah, and so new Crowbar is there now.
Yep.
So after Crowbar, which was a very small venue when it was here in Brisbane before it closed
downstairs
down at the pandemic.
I think 380 cap.
Yeah, and it was low ceiling concrete basement venue and everything. Yeah. So there was a lot of massive bands that I saw there, but small bands as well. But for Crowbar to reopen in Brisbane and to bring that vibe back is great, but I feel bad for the guys that were running the Zoo because they really did everything they could to try and keep that place open for the right reasons.
Totally.
And they just weren't able to do it because of the way that the landscape has changed. And I've seen some amazing bands there as well. And I just struggle to think that we could maybe get to the point one day where the only places to go and see bands are like Fortitude Music Hall, Eaton's Hill, and even the Tivoli's not a huge venue, but if they were the only sort of places, because the magic of a small, intimate show in a basement or something like that really shows you can do it. If you're going to only massive stages and seeing big bands there, it's way harder to see it and want to be it because you're like, oh, well, never going to get there.
Well, yeah, like you need to see every step on the pathway to that stadium.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You can't, like it is a pipe dream and it's the stuff of movies to go from being plucked from an open mic.
Yeah.
To being put on a stadium stage.
100%.
In a movie, do you remember that movie Rockstar with Mark Wahlberg where he gets picked as the new vocalist for check it out. It's
okay.
But it is one of those like he grows up with the posters of that band on the wall and he ends up getting chosen to be the replacement vocalist for that band. And like in the 80s, so it's sort of, and I think they use that You've Got the Touch from the Transformers soundtrack.
Okay.
Yeah. As like that's the song that his band sings. I'm pretty sure that's the deal.
Right.
It's been 20 years since I've watched that movie, but it is that sort of.
That's probably why I haven't heard of it.
Yeah,
like,
it's like
I haven't seen anything pre like 2000s Wahlberg.
Yeah.
So,
but that's the stuff of movies. Is like seeing that going from small stage to stadium, and that's not the reality of it. It's grinding and celebrating. When you sell out your first 500 cap and graduating to a theatre.
Yeah.
And then graduating to an arena and then graduating, doing that whole pathway.
Yeah, and also those smaller venues give jobs to the people that facilitate the bands getting where they're going as well. So, we're getting rained on pretty hard. So this new studio has a tin roof, and I think...
So the audio is just going to be shat on.
I think these last few... if you didn't hear the end of it, you didn't miss much, I guess. I don't know.
Peace out.
Yeah. Bye.